He then began to speak to them in parables. A man planted a vineyard. He put a wall around it, dug a pit for the winepress, and built a watchtower. You know what? Before we go any further, we should probably read where this is coming from. I was going to do this at the end, but we should probably have this imagery in mind before we get started, because again, the people he's listening to would know this. This is in Isaiah 5. This is Isaiah 5. I will sing a song to the one I love, a song about his vineyard. My loved one had a vineyard on a fertile hillside. He dug it up, then cleared it of stones, and planted it with the choicest vines. He built a watchtower in it and cut out a winepress as well. Then he looked for a crop of good grapes, but it yielded only bad fruit. Now you dwellers in Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more could have been done for my vineyard than what I have done for it? When I looked for good grapes, why did it yield only bad? Now I will tell you what I am going to do to my vineyard. I will take away it. The vineyard is Israel, of course. The owner of the vineyard is God, and the vineyard itself is Israel. I will take away its hedge, and it will be destroyed. I will break down its wall, and it will be trampled. I will make it a wasteland, neither pruned nor cultivated, and briars and thorns will grow there. I will command the clouds not to rain on it. The vineyard of the Lord Almighty this is Isaiah's own interpretation of his little song there. The vineyard of the Lord Almighty is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah are the garden of his delight. And he looked for justice. That's the fruit he wanted to have. But saw bloodshed. For righteousness, but heard cries of distress. And then he goes on to give them woes about what they're doing to cause the bloodshed and the distress. So that's the context here. That's the imagery that Jesus is pulling from when he tells his story here about the man who owns a vineyard. Whenever he tells a story about a vineyard in any of the Gospels, and again, we're going to read more of his parables in the other Gospels. Mark doesn't have very many. You just need, generally speaking, the owner of the vineyard is going to be God. There are maybe a few instances where it's not, but for the most part, the owner of the vineyard is going to be God. He then began to speak to them in parables. A man planted a vineyard. He put a wall around it, dug a pit for the winepress, and built a watchtower. Then he rented the vineyard to some farmers and went away on a journey. At harvest time, he sent a servant to the tenants to collect from them some of the fruit of the harvest. But they seized him, beat him, and sent him away empty-handed. Then he sent another servant to them. They struck this man on the head and treated him shamefully. He sent still another, and that one they killed. He sent many others. Some of them they beat, others they killed. He had one left to send, a son, whom he loved. Twice now in the Gospel of Mark, we have heard a voice from heaven say, "You are my son whom I love. With you I am well pleased." That's in Mark 1, verse 11. And then in Mark 9, verse 7, "This is my son whom I love. Listen to him." He sent, back to Mark 12, he sent many others. Some of them they beat, others they killed. He had one left to send, a son whom he loved. He sent him last of all, saying, "They will respect my son." But the tenants said to one another, "This is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours." So they took him and killed him and threw him out of the vineyard. What then will the owner of that vineyard do? He will come and kill those tenants and give the vineyard to others. Haven't you read the scripture? The stone the builders rejected has become the capstone. The Lord has done this, and it is marvelous in our eyes. We just read that in Psalm 118. We don't need to read it again today because we just did a couple videos ago. So we read about it when they were praising him coming into the city as king. And Jesus himself is now referring to that psalm and applying it to himself. Then they looked for a way to arrest him because they knew he had spoken the parable against them. But they were afraid of the crowd, so they left him and went away. They are the evil owner, the evil tenants who are trying to take the vineyard away from the owner. The servants the owner sends to them are the prophets. We'll read about this. It's developed more fully in the other Gospels, as most of Jesus' teachings are. And they beat them and stone them, John the Baptist being the last of those before Jesus himself, the Son, comes, and they're going to kill him too. Later, I presume this is later that day, it could be the next day, there is a day that's unaccounted for in the Passion Week. When they go from Sunday, the day he entered the city, to the following Sunday when he resurrects, that's the following Sunday. There is a day that's kind of unaccounted for, somewhere in there, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. We don't really know. We get the entrance to the city on Sunday. He goes to the Bethany, and Monday he goes, and that's when he does the cursing of the tree. And then this is the next day when they see the tree cursed, and they're having this confrontation. But we don't get a time marker again until Thursday, the day before. So we're a little lost here on what day of the week this actually happened. But sometime during that last week, sometime on Tuesday or Wednesday of that last week. So later, they sent some of the Pharisees and Herodians to Jesus to catch him in his words. Now the Pharisees, as I said before, were a pressure group that wanted to get everyone in Israel to follow the law. And they had built up this series of traditions and customs on top of the law. To get people to follow the law itself, they had written a whole set of traditions around the law and telling people to follow those. If you follow those traditions, you won't break the law. And they were doing that because they thought that by sticking so closely to the law, the Torah, they would get God to send the Messiah to come to rule them as he promised. The Herodians were allied with the Romans because Herod was deriving his authority from Rome. So they were in favor of assimilating with the cultures around them. They were Hellenists. That means they were in favor of not sticking firmly to traditions and allowing themselves to compromise with the cultures around them. So normally these two groups would have had nothing in common, and they would have never worked together in any circumstance other than to unite for a common goal, which in this case is to get Jesus. Later, they sent some of the Pharisees and Herodians to Jesus to catch him in his words. They came to him and said, "Teacher, we know you are a man of integrity. You aren't swayed by men because you pay no attention to who they are, but you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Is it right to," so here they're buttering him up here, "is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay or shouldn't we?" They want to catch him. They want to come up with a question that they think he can't answer. If they say they should pay taxes to Caesar, that's going to, if Jesus replies that they should pay taxes to Caesar, that's going to disappoint all of his followers who want him to overthrow Caesar. They want him to be the king who is here to dislodge Caesar and establish a new Jewish ruler in the line of David. If he says they shouldn't pay taxes to Caesar, that will give the Herodians reason to summon the Roman soldiers to come and catch this guy because he's an insurrectionist trying to rebel against Caesar. And they think they've got him in a question that he can't answer. But Jesus knew their hypocrisy. "Why are you trying to trap me?" he asked. "Bring me a denarius and let me look at it." They brought the coin, and he asked them, Whose portrait is this, and whose inscription? Caesar's, they replied. The other coins, like ours, had the portrait of the emperor on it. In this case, it was Tiberius Caesar. And he had a little slogan on it, too, which is his inscription. So that's what he's showing. He's not like showing them a penny with Abraham Lincoln on it or something. It's showing him, he's showing them, or they're giving him a coin, and he's asking them who is on this coin. It's Tiberius Caesar. It is logo, his inscription. Caesar's, they replied. Then Jesus said to them, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. And they were amazed at him. So he avoided their question. He said, this is not a yes or no answer. Some things are Caesar's, some things are God. God has given Caesar the authority in the first place. Some things are Caesar's, some things are God's. Then the Sadducees, so that was the Pharisees and Herodians who came up to him. Then the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to him with a question. Teacher, they said, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies and leaves a wife but no children, the man must marry the widow and have children for his brother. Let's look that up. That's the concept of levirate marriage. We read about this, for example, in their law in Deuteronomy 25, starting in verse 5. If brothers are living together and one of them dies without a son, his widow must not marry outside the family. Her husband's brother shall take her and marry her and fulfill the duty of a brother-in-law to her. The first son she bears shall carry on the name of the dead brother, so that his name will not be blotted out from Israel. However, if a man does not want to marry his brother's wife, she shall go to the elders of the town gate and say, my husband's brother refuses to carry on his brother's name in Israel. He will not fulfill the duty of a brother-in-law to me. And the elders of his town shall summon him and talk to him. If he persists in saying, I do not want to marry her, his brother's widow shall go up to him in the presence of the elders, take off one of his sandals, spit in his face, and say, this is what is done to the man who will not build up his brother's family line. The man's line shall be known in Israel as the family of the unsandaled. So they were supposed to do that. It was not only an allowance in the law, it was a command. You know, that was what you were supposed to do. If you didn't, you were going to be shamed. So Moses wrote, back to Mark, Moses wrote for us, if a man's brother dies and leaves a wife but no children, the man must marry the widow and have children for his brother. Now, there were 7 brothers. They have a thought experiment. The Pharisees and the Herodians had a thought experiment. They thought they had come up with a question that Jesus couldn't answer. And now the Sadducees think that they have a question Jesus can answer. The Sadducees are the priestly class. They're the elite class. They are associated with the temple. The Pharisees were the layman class, and they were centered in the synagogues scattered throughout Israel. And the Sadducees are centered on the temple. That's why after the fall of the temple, there are no more Sadducees. And the Sadducees held to a very strict view of the scriptures and only really accepted the law of Moses as authoritative. They didn't accept the rest of the Old Testament scriptures. And there is no real reference at all. We read about that ourselves as we went through the Old Testament, to the resurrection in the works of Moses. So they believe there was no resurrection. Of course, that benefits them as the ruling class, the ones in authority. That means in this life they had all the power, and there was no life to come in which they had to fear giving up their power. So the more powerful one is, and generally speaking, the more power one has in life, the more one is content to believe there is no future life. And that was true in these guys' case. So they think they come up with a brilliant thought experiment that will disprove the resurrection. They believe that they have figured out a way to logically prove there will not be a resurrection of the dead in the world to come, the age to come. So here it is. There were 7 brothers. Here's their thought experiment. There were 7 brothers. The first one married and died without leaving any children. The second one married the widow, but he also died, leaving no child. It was the same as the third. In fact, none of the 7 left any children. Last of all, the woman died too. At the resurrection, so that's the scenario. 7 brothers, 1 woman, The first brother married this woman, had no children, he died. The next brother in line married her because he's supposed to, and supposed to have children in his brother's name. He died. Next up, the third, they all went down the list. Couldn't produce any children. None of them produced children either for their other brothers or for themselves. The woman died too. So now what do we do? Now what, Jesus? How are you going to get out of this one, huh? So last of all, the woman died too. So, at the resurrection, whose wife will she be? Since the seven were all married to her. They can't all be married to her in the resurrection, now can they? They've got him stumped. They've got Jesus a question that he's not going to be able to answer. They thought this through. Jesus replied. Now obviously, Jesus believed in a resurrection. Otherwise, they wouldn't be coming to him with this question. They did not believe in a resurrection. Clearly, Jesus did, and they knew that Jesus did. Otherwise, they wouldn't bother asking him this question. Jesus replied, are you not in error because you do not know the Scriptures or the power of God? When the dead rise, they will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like the angels in heaven. So basically, the answer here is that it doesn't make a difference. They're not, the life to come, the life after the resurrection, is not going to follow the same rules that this age follows. The question has no purpose. The purpose of the question itself doesn't apply because there won't be standard marriage rules in the age to come. They'll be like the angels in heaven, which just exists. I don't know if that means there'll be no gender in heaven or what. Okay, as far as I can tell, all angels spoken of in the Scriptures are masculine in nature. So maybe all women will be turned into men when they get to heaven. I don't know. Like I don't know. I don't know how strictly or literally we need to take that in terms of us becoming sexless beings. I don't believe there'll be procreation. I do believe that there will be a cessation of that. I don't think that we won't really need to, because we won't need to continue propagating the species. So I don't believe there will be no more procreation. I don't believe that. I don't believe there will continue to be procreation. If that's what that could be what he's referring to here. Whether or not there's still sex and gender, I'm not sure. I tend to think there probably will be. Otherwise, the only other thing I can think of is that all women will be turned into men, which I don't think that would happen, because all angels are men, or at least they're all described as being masculine in the Scriptures. So I don't think we need to think of that part. All I can read into that is that we're not going to have typical marriage, and we're not going to procreate. Now, we could still have sex. I don't know. Okay, I don't. God gave them the institution of marriage right from the beginning, before sin came into the world. There may still be male and female. There may still be partners in a sense. I don't know. But whatever system governs the world to come, if there is one, it will not be like the one that exists now. So the question itself has no premise. Like the premise of the question itself is flawed. There's no point to it because the rules of the world to come, the age to come, are not going to be the same as the current age. Now, about the dead rising, have you not read in the book of Moses, in the account of the bush, how God said to him, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. You are badly mistaken. At the time God spoke to Moses, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would have all been dead for at least 100 plus years. So, God is in, and we'll get a little bit more shades of this in the other Gospels. Luke in particular will give us a little bit more emphasis on what Jesus means here. But the idea is that when God introduced himself to Moses in 1500 BC or 1450 BC or whatever it was, he introduced himself as the God of three guys who had died physically a couple of hundred years before. But he's acting as though they're still alive. Because in God's view, they are. God is the God of the living, so in God's view, in some way or another, at the time he spoke to Moses in 1450 BC, 1445, whatever it was, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were still alive in some sense or another. We'll talk more about that when we read this account in the other Gospels, because there will be a little bit more explanation of that in the other Gospels. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, "This is a guy apparently doing this on his own. Unlike the other questions we've read about, this doesn't seem to be an organized group effort to try to stump Jesus. This is a guy who seems to have genuinely been asking a question of Jesus because he was impressed with Jesus' previous answers." Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, "Of all the commandments, which is the most important?" "The most important one," answered Jesus, "is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength." That comes from Deuteronomy 6. As Moses is beginning his farewell address to the people, which is basically what all Deuteronomy is Moses' farewell address to the people, and a restatement of the law that he had already given them. Let's start at the beginning of the chapter. "These are the commands, decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you, to observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess, so that you, your children, and their children after them may fear the Lord your God as long as you live, by keeping all his decrees and commands that I give you, so that you may enjoy long life. Hear, O Israel, and be careful to obey, so that it may go well with you, and that you may increase greatly in a land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God of your fathers, promised you. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength." Jesus says with all your mind and with all your strength too. So he's adding another dimension there as well. The second is this. Now the guy didn't ask for the top two, but Jesus is giving him the top two. The second is this. Love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. That comes from Leviticus, the middle book of the Torah, the Pentateuch. Leviticus 19, to be specific, if I can ever get there. Leviticus 19:18. "Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against one of your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." There is no greater commandment than these. "Well said, teacher," the man replied. "You are right in saying that God is one and there is no other but him. To love him with all your heart, with all your understanding, and with all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself, is more important than all burnt offerings and sacrifices." When Jesus saw that he had answered wisely, he said to him, "You are not far from the kingdom of God." And from then on, no one dared to ask him any more questions. So he has answered every one of their questions. They have come up with the best things that they could figure out. They have spent who knows how long coming up with these brain teasers, trying to put forth the perfect question that Jesus won't be able to answer, and they'll finally be able to get him. And they couldn't do it. They put their heads together, they mustered their best resources of intelligence and scriptural wisdom, and he found a way to answer every one of their questions. And they don't have any ammunition left in their guns. So now Jesus is going to press his advantage and ask them a question. While Jesus was teaching in the temple courts, he asked, "How is it that the teachers of the law say that the Christ is the son of David? David himself, speaking by the Holy Spirit, declared, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet.' David himself calls him Lord. How then can he be his son? How can he be less than David if David himself says he's more than David? The large crowd listened to him with delight. That particular psalm is 110, and we are going to, this is actually a very significant one, and we'll read about this later in the New Testament as it applies to Jesus. Psalm 110 of David, a psalm. The Lord, and that's capital L-O-R-D, Lord, so that's Yahweh, Jehovah, that's Israel's God, said to my Lord, sit at my, now that's lowercase O-R-D, Lord, that means master. So God, Jehovah, Israel's God, said to my master, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. The Lord, capital L-O-R-D, Lord, Israel's God, Jehovah, will extend your, that's Lord, master. God will extend Jesus' mighty scepter from Zion. You will rule in the midst of your enemies. Your troops will be willing, on the day of battle, arrayed in holy majesty. From the womb of the dawn, you will receive the dew of your youth. The Lord, that's again capital L-O-R-D, Yahweh, God, Yahweh, has sworn and will not change his mind. You, again, L-O-R-D, Lord, Master, Jesus, are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. The Lord, that's Master, is at your right hand. He will crush kings in the day of his wrath. He will judge the nations, heaping up the dead, and crushing the rulers of the whole earth. He will drink from a brook beside the way. Therefore he will lift up his head. So David is talking in this whole psalm about Jesus and about the authority he was given by God. So Jesus here is saying, how can David be my superior when he himself says he's my inferior? David himself declared me to be his Lord and Master. So how can I be less than him? That's what it means by saying son of David. I mean, son of David refers to him being a royal member of the seed of David. But it also means that he, in a way it means that David's going to be greater than him because David was the first. In their culture and their mindset, the predecessor was the greater man. Generally speaking, the farther back you go, the more honor the position gets because everyone after you comes from you. David was the first. He was the one to whom the promises were spoken. So they see David as the greatest. And everyone after him is less than David. Jesus comes later than David chronologically. He's the son of David. He's from his line, from his seed. He's going to be his master. He's going to be his king too. David is not going to be greater than Jesus when the kingdom does come. As he taught, Jesus said, watch out for the teachers of the law. They like to walk around in flowing robes and be greeted in the marketplaces and have the most important seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses and for a show make lengthy prayers. Such men will be punished most severely. Now Matthew has a lot more to add here, but Mark just leaves that there as his criticism, Jesus' criticism of the teachers of the law. And to contrast that, we get this next story. So after he got done criticizing the teachers of the law for being pretentious and ostentatious and loving attention and wanting everyone to see how holy and righteous they are and get praise for that, Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts. But a poor widow, that's kind of like what these, now these may not have been unholy people, okay, these may have been good people, but the point that's being contrasted here is between what Jesus got done saying and what we're going to see next. But a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins. We have a footnote down here saying quadrantes, only worth a fraction of a penny, or two leptas, and it's only worth a quadrantris, a fraction of a penny. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, I tell you the truth. This poor widow has put more money into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she out of her poverty put in everything. all she had to live on. It doesn't mean that if you're wealthy or you have money or you don't live in poverty, you shouldn't give, okay? But the illustration is being made between the ostentatious, pretentious, attention-seeking givers and the poor widow who puts everything that she has into the treasury, which isn't much. Financially, it isn't much. It's not going to accomplish much in terms of financing the temple. But it is all that she had. God views that as more significant than a rich person giving a large amount but still having tons left over. But that doesn't excuse the rich person from not putting in a large amount.